I'm Dr. Dana Evans, and I'm going to be reading from Fahrenheit 451. The book was written in the 1950s, and it's been challenged as recently as just a few years ago, mostly based off of the language and the violence. It's kind of ironic since the book is actually all about suppression of books and suppression of knowledge. I'm going to read a couple passages from it. It was a pleasure to burn. It was a special pleasure to see things eaten, to see things blackened and changed. With the brass nozzle in his fist, this great python spitting its venomous kerosene upon the world, the blood pounded in his head, and his hands were the hands of some amazing conductor playing all the symphonies of blazing and burning to bring down the tatters and charcoal ruins of the history. With his symbolic helmet numbered 451 on his stolid head, and his eyes all orange flame with the thought of what came next, he flicked the igniter, and the house jumped up in a gorging fire that burned the evening sky red and yellow and black. He strode in a swarm of fireflies. He wanted, above all, like the old joke, to shove a marshmallow on a stick in the furnace, while the flapping pigeon-wing books died on the porch and the lawn of the house. While the books went up in sparkling whirls and blew away on a wind turned dark with burning. Montage grinned, the fierce grin of all men, sinned and driven back by flame. He knew that when he returned to the firehouse, he might wink at himself, a minstrel man, a burnt cork in the mirror. Later, going to sleep, he would feel the fiery smile still gripped by his face muscles in the dark. It never went away, that smile. It never, ever went away as long as he remembered. A little later in the book, Montage begins to question what he is doing, and his boss, Beatty, comes to have a talk with him. I'm going to read you a little bit from that. Once, books appealed to a few people, here, there, everywhere. They could afford to be different. The world was roomy, but then the world got full of eyes and elbows and mouths. Double, triple, quadruple population. Films and radios, magazines, books leveled down to a sort of paste pudding norm. Do you follow me? I think so. Beatty peered at the smoke pattern he had put out in the air. Picture it. 19th century man with his horses, dogs, carts, slow motion. Then, in the 20th century, speed up your camera. Books cut shorter, condensations, digests, tabloids. Everything boils down to the gag, the snap ending. The snap ending, Mildred nodded. Classics cut to 15-minute radio shows, then cut again to fill 2-minute book columns, winding up at last a 10 or 12-line dictionary resume. I exaggerate, of course. The dictionaries were for reference, but many were those whose sole knowledge of Hamlet. You know the title, certainly, Montague. It is probably only a faint rumor of a title to you, Mrs. Montague. Whose sole knowledge, I say, of Hamlet was a one-page digest in a book that claimed, now at last you can read all the classics, keep up with your neighbors. Do you see? Out of the nursery into college and back to the nursery. There's your intellectual pattern for the past 5 centuries or more. What more easily explained and natural? With schools turning out more runners, jumpers, thinkers, grabbers, snatchers, flyers, and swimmers, instead of examiners, critics, knowers, and imaginative creators. The word intellectual, of course, became a swear word it deserved to be. You always dread the unfamiliar. Sure, you remember the boy in your own school class who was exceptionally bright, did most of the reciting and answering while others sat like so many leaden idols, hating him. Wasn't it this bright boy you selected for beatings and tortures after hours? Of course it was. We must all be alike. Not everyone born free and equal, as the Constitution says, but everyone made equal. Each man the image of each other, then are happy, for there are no mountains to make them cower, to judge themselves against. So a book is a loaded gun in the house next door. Burn it. Take the shot from the weapon. Breach man's mind. Who knows who might be the target of a well-read man? Me? I won't stomach them for a minute. So when houses were finally fireproofed completely all over the world, you were correct in your assumption the other night. There is no longer need of the firemen of the old purpose. They were given the new job, as custodians of our peace of mind, the focus of our understanding, and rightful dread of being inferior. Official censors, judge and executioners, that's you, Montauk, and that's me. And at last, when Montauk really realizes what is going on, we have just a little bit more here. It is not pleasant, but when we are not in control, we're the odd minority crying in the wilderness. When the war's over, perhaps we can be of some use in this world. Do you really think they'll listen then? If not, we'll just have to wait. We'll pass the books on to our children by word of mouth and let our children wait, in turn, on the other people. A lot will be lost that way, of course, but you can't make people listen. They have to come around in their own time, wondering what happened and why the world blew up under them. It can't last. How many of you are there? Thousands on the road, abandoned rail tracks tonight, bums on the outside, libraries inside. It wasn't planned at first. Each man had a book he wanted to remember, and then did. Over a period of 20 years or so, we met each other, traveling, and got a loose network together and set out a plan. The most important single thing we had to pound into ourselves is that we were not important. We mustn't be pedants. We were not to feel superior to anyone else in the world. We were nothing more than dust jackets for books, of no significance otherwise.